There are people who move through the world as if the current of popular opinion simply doesn't touch them. They wear what they've always worn, listen to what they've always listened to, think what they've always thought, even as everything around them shifts and transforms. They're not making a statement. They're not rebelling. They're just unmoved. And in a culture that runs on the fuel of collective enthusiasm, on the next thing and the newest thing, these individuals stand out precisely because they're standing still. Watch them in a room full of excited chatter about the latest show everyone's binge-watching, and you'll notice something. They listen. They nod. But there's a quality to their attention that's different, present but not pulled in. They don't rush home to start episode 1. They don't feel that familiar tug of curiosity mixed with social pressure. For them, the fact that everyone else is doing something isn't a reason to do it. It's almost strangely a reason not to. These are people who have somehow remained immune to one of the most powerful forces in human psychology: social proof. The instinct to look at what others are doing and adjust accordingly. The ancient, survival-level drive to stay with the herd. And their resistance to this force reveals something profound about how identity, autonomy, and authenticity develop in the human mind. In conversations, they're the ones who don't update their references. They'll mention a musician from 15 years ago with the same enthusiasm others reserve for whoever topped the charts last week. They'll describe a restaurant they've been going to for a decade while everyone else debates the new fusion place that just opened. To some, this reads as stubborn. To others, it seems almost innocent, like they genuinely haven't noticed that the world has moved on. But neither interpretation captures what's actually happening. In relationships, they tend to value depth over novelty. They keep friendships that span decades. They return to the same vacation spots. They reread books instead of always reaching for new ones. Their partners sometimes feel frustrated by this, a desire for them to be more adventurous, more open to new experiences, more willing to try what everyone else is trying. But for these individuals, the appeal of the familiar isn't about fear of the new. It's about something else entirely. At work, they're the ones still using methods that technically work, even if there's a newer, trendier approach being adopted by everyone else. They're not Luddites. They'll adopt new technology when it serves a clear purpose. But they won't upgrade just because everyone else is upgrading. They won't pivot their entire approach because a charismatic thought leader wrote a viral post about some new framework. This makes them seem outdated to some colleagues, reassuringly stable to others, and genuinely confusing to those who can't understand why they're not more excited about the latest innovation. To outsiders, it might seem like these people are simply unaware. Like they're not plugged into the cultural conversation, not paying attention to what's current and relevant. Or it might seem like deliberate contrarianism, a pose of superiority, a way of saying, I'm above all that. But that's not what's actually happening. What most people don't understand is that this isn't just stubbornness or ignorance or pretension. Psychologically, this is internal locus of evaluation in its purest form. It's a pattern where the primary reference point for decisions, preferences, and beliefs sits firmly inside the self rather than in the external world. These individuals have developed what psychologists call high autonomous functioning, the capacity to generate their own sense of what's valuable, interesting, or worthwhile without needing external validation or consensus to confirm it. Their brain has adapted to filter information through a deeply personal relevance detector rather than a social relevance detector. And this adaptation didn't happen randomly. Somewhere in their history, they learned, perhaps through painful experience with conformity, perhaps through early modeling by independent-minded caregivers, perhaps through a series of moments where following the crowd led them away from themselves, that their own internal compass was more trustworthy than the collective direction of the moment. It's a learned response, and like all learned responses, it serves a purpose. It protected their sense of self from being dissolved into the preferences of others. It kept them from losing track of who they were beneath the layers of who they were supposed to be. And even when that protection becomes so strong it creates its own limitations, the core function remains. This is how they maintain psychological integrity. Here's what's really happening beneath the surface. When they encounter a trend, a new way of dressing, a cultural phenomenon everyone's discussing, a perspective that's suddenly everywhere, their nervous system doesn't produce the typical response. For most people, there's an automatic interest spike, a kind of social attentional pull. Everyone's talking about this, so it must be important. I should look into it. I should have an opinion. This response is deeply wired, part of our evolutionary heritage as tribal creatures who needed to stay synchronized with the group. But for these individuals, that pull is muted or absent. Instead, they experience something more like a reflexive question. Is this actually relevant to me? Does this connect to something I already care about? Or is this just noise? They're not consciously choosing to resist. They're responding to an internal experience where trend-based appeals simply don't register as compelling. The psychological weight that everyone's doing it carries for most people doesn't carry the same weight for them. This is what psychologists call intrinsic motivation dominance. Their behavior is primarily driven by internal interests, values, and curiosities rather than external rewards like social belonging or status. In their inner world, the question isn't, what should I be paying attention to? But, what do I find genuinely interesting? And the remarkable thing is that these two questions often lead to completely different answers. But here's where it gets complex. The same mechanism that protects their authenticity also isolates them. The same filter that keeps them from being swept away by every passing fad also means they sometimes miss genuinely valuable innovations or cultural moments that could enrich their lives. They become incredibly skilled at self-directed learning, at developing deep expertise in their chosen areas of interest, at maintaining consistency of self across time and context. Yet they quietly struggle with cultural fluency, with being able to connect with others through shared reference points, with the kind of spontaneous social bonding that happens when people discover they're both excited about the same new thing. It's not that they don't want connection. It's that their entire system is wired to prioritize authenticity over belonging. And in a world where so much of belonging is built on shared enthusiasm for what's current, this creates a constant, low-level friction. What looks like indifference is actually discernment. They're not uninterested in the world, they're intensely interested, but in a highly selective way. They're not closed-minded, they're actually applying more rigorous personal criteria to what gets their attention. They're not stuck in the past, they're operating on a different timeline, one that isn't measured in trend cycles but in personal meaning cycles. They've mastered the art of contentment with what already works, what already resonates, what already makes sense to them. But they quietly struggle with a particular kind of loneliness, the loneliness of not being able to fully participate in the collective excitement that bonds others together. They can be in a room full of people discussing something with animated passion and feel fundamentally outside of it, not because they're excluded, but because they genuinely don't feel the pull that everyone else seems to feel. For the people in their lives, this pattern creates a distinctive dynamic. Friends might feel slightly hurt that this person doesn't get excited about things they recommend, doesn't watch the show they insisted was unmissable, doesn't seem to care about the thing that's brought the friend so much joy. It can feel like disinterest in the friendship itself, when it's actually something else entirely. A deep psychological need to protect their own sense of what matters. Partners often experience a version of this tension, wanting to share new experiences, to explore novel things together, to be the kind of couple that stays current and engaged with the world. But their trend-resistant partner keeps gravitating back to the familiar, the proven, the personally meaningful. What the partner might interpret as rigidity or fear, not realizing it's actually a form of psychological self-preservation, a way of saying, I need to hold on to what feels true to me, even when everything around me is changing. Family members may interpret it as being difficult, as refusing to get with the program, as some kind of passive rebellion against anything the mainstream culture values. They don't understand that it's not about rebellion at all. It's about having a different kind of psychological GPS, one that's calibrated to internal signals rather than external ones. And here's the paradox these individuals live with. The more they resist external influence to stay true to themselves, the more they risk becoming rigid and cut off from the genuine evolution that comes from exposure to new ideas. They want to be authentic, to live according to their own values, to not be swept along by forces they don't believe in. But they find themselves sometimes trapped in patterns that are no longer serving them, held in place not by genuine preference but by the sheer momentum of their resistance to change. The trend-following world sees them as out of touch. They see themselves as in touch, with something deeper and more enduring than whatever's capturing collective attention this week. Both perspectives hold truth. Both miss something essential. And in studying these individuals, we find something universal. Their struggle illuminates a truth about human psychology itself. We all navigate the tension between autonomy and belonging, between staying true to ourselves and staying connected to others. These are the two great poles of human social existence, the need to be an individual and the need to be part of something larger. These people simply embody an extreme version of the autonomy pole. Their intensity reveals what exists in smaller doses across all of us, that fundamental challenge of figuring out where our authentic preferences end and our socially conditioned preferences begin. We all face versions of this question. Do I actually like this, or do I like it because everyone else does? Am I choosing this, or is it just the path of least social resistance? But here's what's often missed. This pattern, for all its costs, carries wisdom. These individuals have developed a kind of psychological immunity to manipulation. They understand how easily human beings can be moved by social pressure, by artificial scarcity, by the manufactured urgency of everyone's talking about this. They see through marketing, through trend cycles, through the mechanisms that create artificial demand. Their sensitivity to the difference between genuine interest and socially induced interest has made them remarkably good at identifying what actually matters to them. Their experience with standing outside of collective enthusiasms has given them a certain clarity about their own values, a kind of self-knowledge that people who constantly adapt to external trends sometimes never develop. It's not a flaw to be fixed, it's an adaptation to be understood. Not broken, just calibrated differently. Where most people's psychological settings lean toward, when in doubt, do what others are doing, these individuals lean toward, when in doubt, consult what feels true to me. Both settings have advantages. Both have costs. For those who recognize this pattern in someone they know, or in themselves, understanding is the first step, but not the destination. These individuals need environments where their consistency is valued rather than pathologized, where their resistance to trends is seen as a kind of integrity rather than stubbornness. They benefit from relationships with people who can appreciate depth over novelty, who can understand that not getting excited about the latest thing isn't a rejection of connection but a different way of being connected. What doesn't help is pressure to conform, guilt about not participating, or suggestions that they're somehow missing out on life by not staying current with every cultural moment. These approaches only reinforce their sense that the world doesn't understand them, that they have to choose between authenticity and belonging. Their healing, if that's even the right word, doesn't look like learning to follow trends. It looks like developing flexibility within their autonomy, finding ways to stay true to themselves while remaining open to genuine evolution. It looks like distinguishing between the trends that are truly just noise and the innovations or cultural moments that might actually enrich their carefully curated inner world. Slowly, with the right support and self-awareness, they can begin to explore the difference between principled independence and reflexive resistance. Not by eliminating the pattern, but by bringing consciousness to it. By asking not just, is this trendy? But, might this actually serve me, even though it happens to be popular? By understanding that staying true to themselves doesn't require rejecting everything external, but rather bringing external possibilities into dialogue with internal truth. So when you encounter someone like this, remember, they're not choosing difficulty. They're navigating an internal world that operates on a different frequency than the collective channel most people are tuned to. What appears as disinterest or stubbornness is actually a deep commitment to psychological authenticity, a refusal to let their sense of self be dissolved in the ever-changing acid of popular opinion. Where others see someone out of touch, there's actually someone who's very much in touch, just with different signals. Where others see resistance, there's actually a form of integrity. These individuals remind us that there's more than one way to move through the world, that staying still while everything moves around you is its own kind of courage. They are people who have learned to trust themselves more than they trust the crowd. And perhaps that's worth recognizing, not as pathology, but as part of the vast spectrum of human experience. In a world that increasingly moves in synchronized waves, where algorithm-driven culture creates echo chambers of collective enthusiasm, there's something valuable about people who maintain their own signal, who remember that popularity and truth aren't the same thing, who understand that just because everyone's going somewhere doesn't mean it's worth the journey. These are people who've chosen or been chosen by a kind of psychological autonomy that most of us only experience in glimpses. And in watching them maintain their course while the currents of culture shift around them, we might remember something important, that we all have an internal compass, if we're brave enough to trust it. That beneath all the noise of what we're supposed to like, supposed to care about, supposed to be, there's a quieter voice that knows what actually resonates. These individuals have simply learned to hear that voice above all others. And perhaps that's not something to fix or change or bring up to speed. Perhaps it's something to understand, to respect, and occasionally, to learn from.